Let's move on now. The Prime Minister has refused to rule out an increase in national insurance for employers in the upcoming budget. Labour promised, of course, in its general election manifesto not to increase working people's taxes, including national insurance payments. Well, joining me now is our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue. Ali, good to talk to you. There's been a hell of a lot of speculation over the last couple of days about this national insurance rise, and frankly, the government are doing nothing to dampen down expectations and rumours.
Yeah, you're right. Look, we're well into the thick of it now, that guessing game that often happens ahead of budget day as the government tries to pitch roll. And as you say, you know, the speculation is pretty overwhelming at this stage. We had the Prime Minister dodging questions from Rishi Sunak at PMQs about national insurance. We've had the Chancellor swerving questions. And now the Prime Minister this morning really not ruling out raising national insurance on employers. Now, this has, of course, brought questions about whether they would be breaking a manifesto pledge, because remember, in the build-up to the election, the Labour Party ruled out raising income tax, corporation tax and national insurance, as they put it, on working people. So plenty of scrutiny now about what exactly did they mean by working people. Why would an employer not necessarily count as a working person? Is this a Labour Party following the spirit of the law but not the letter of the law? I should say, you know, nothing is 100% confirmed yet. We won't know that till budget day. But what we do know is that Rachel Reeves has a lot of money to raise. We've heard the Labour Party again and again talking about a £22 billion black hole. The IFS says they will need to raise even more money if they want to restore public services in the way that they pledged to do in the build-up to the election. So this is a Labour Party with a difficult job on its hands. As you say, the hints becoming pretty overwhelming at this stage that they could well increase national insurance on employers. Other speculation over things like capital gains tax too, but we won't know anything yet until the 30th of October when Rachel Reeves delivers that budget.
Indeed, Ali, just over 2 weeks away, very much anticipated. Thank you very much indeed, Ali Fortescue, there joining us from Westminster. Now, let's look at today's job figures. They show that earnings growth fell earlier this year, boosting hopes of an interest rate cut by the Bank of England next month. Let's have a look at some of the figures. UK average regular earnings growth fell from 4.9% in the 3 months to July, down from 5.1%. According to the Office for National Statistics, unemployment also fell, down from 4.1% to 4% in August. And job vacancies were also down a little, by 34,000 to 841,000 between July and September. That's the lowest level in more than 3 years. Well, joining me now is James Reid. He's the chairman of the recruitment agency Reid Group. James, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. What's really interesting about the ONS figures that they have released themselves this morning is they say they're not necessarily terribly robust because lots of people aren't responding to the surveys like they did in the old days. So is your sense what the figures show today in terms of wage growth and also those falling vacancy levels?
Hello, Darren. Yes, I mean, the figures are sometimes subject to revision, or they're sort of cautionary about them. I mean, it's sometimes difficult to see the wood for the trees. There are so many numbers that are published. The one I keep a really keen eye on is the third one you showed, which is the vacancy numbers, now down again, another 35,000. That is a concerning trend because, as you said, it's 3 years of decline. So that would be the first thing I look at. The other thing that I follow is payrolled employees. And that also showed a decline of 35,000 circa in July and August. And they said, although they cautioned that it might not be correct, that there might be a further 15,000 decline in payroll employees in September. So that would be 50,000 over the quarter. So those are concerning statistics that suggest the labour market is continuing to cool.
Yeah, so James, on that point about job vacancies, I say the lowest in 3 years. Well, why is that? We've got, you know, record levels of migration if you look at some of the figures. It's a long way from during COVID when we were struggling to find workers. Why are the number of vacancies available falling?
Well, we've seen this as a very gradual trend. I've described it as a slow-moving car crash in the past as these vacancies continue to drop. But I'm concerned now that that trend is accelerating because in our own data we saw a drop of 32% in the first 2 weeks of October. Why is it? Well, I think there's a combination of things, but overall employer confidence is low. And it's low because of high interest rates. It's low because of pending changes perhaps in the budget. We just heard about employers' national insurance potentially going up. And it's low because of the outlook on workers' rights and other changes that employers are having to take account for. So there's a lot going on here, but at the moment, I think the labour market, is lacking confidence, and we're also seeing it in applicants. People sitting tight in their jobs rather than changing.
It is fascinating, that, isn't it? Of course, politics always spills into economics, doesn't it? And we have got a budget, and a lot of people are waiting for that in just over 2 weeks' time. How much has potentially, this change to national employment, national insurance, sorry, I should say, contributions weighing on business, and also, as you've rightly pointed out, some of those changes that the government have announced in regards to workers' rights?
Well, it's when you put it all together that it becomes problematic. So the recently tabled potential change, and I think it's still a potential one in national insurance, is effectively a tax on jobs. Whether that's a tax on working people or not is probably debatable, but it is definitely a tax on jobs at a time when vacancies are declining. And I think, the government may come to regret doing that if the labour market continues to weaken in the year ahead. The other changes, the employment rights change, the one that particularly has caused dismay amongst small employers is the full rights from day one, because people wonder, how they might exit someone who doesn't fit in or isn't doing a good job without ending up in a tribunal. So that has weighed on employers, and I think overall caused confidence to reduce.
And just finally, James, while I've got you, I don't know if you saw today the Health Secretary talking about potentially the use of these kind of so-called fat vaccines in order to try and get some of the people who are economically inactive back into the workplace. What do you think of that idea? Because we do know that economic inactivity is a big problem in many parts of the country.
Well, economic activity, according to this morning's figures, is at 21.8%, so it's a stubbornly high number, over 9 million people. So I don't think these injections would be a pinprick, really, in terms of dealing with that. I guess, if someone's health is improved by going this way, then that's very welcome. But there are other ways of getting economically inactive people back into work, which are available right now, which would be actually using the infrastructure that's out there for job centres and private providers who could assist people right now on a voluntary basis, get back into work and deliver good results, I believe.
James, fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed. That's James Reid there, the chairman of the Reid Group, joining us from central London. Well, let's stick with the budget, because the Prime Minister has been wooing wealthy business leaders to try and boost investment in the UK. Remember that big summit yesterday? At it was John Caldwell. He's the founder of Phones for You. John, good morning to you. Let's just start with what we heard there from James. He was describing this potential national insurance rise, which we may or may not see in the budget, as a jobs tax. Do you view it that way?
I do. Of course, it's a jobs tax, but is it overly worrying? That depends on what the overall package of measures are. What's really positive about the Labour government, and I've never seen this before in all my history, is such a absolute dedicated passion for growth and a dedicated passion for the environment. And Labour have pledged this so vociferously to the whole world. And if they don't achieve it, then they're going to be a really huge failure as a political party. And of course, Britain will fail. But I have every confidence the way that they're going is going to actually succeed. Now, regarding the negatives, there's going to be some negatives because we have a hole to plug. And there's always going to be negatives, but what they have to do is get the package right in the round so that businesses are encouraged to invest and grow, and inward investment flows into the UK.
Indeed, and we saw that yesterday, didn't we? But during the summer and the first 100 days of this government, a lot of business leaders, a lot of people I'm sure you knew, felt that the government were talking the UK economy down too much. That was actually having a negative impact.
Sorry, talking down in what way?
Well, talking about the fact that there were very difficult decisions, that the economic future wasn't particularly bright, that there was a lot more pain to come. That's not a message that you want to send to the rest of the world, is it?
I think, there's always an element of politicking, isn't there? That's what politicians do. And the more they can set the stage in a negative environment ready for the big positive, which came yesterday. There was no negativity yesterday at all. And that's not just within the Labour Party that there was no negativity. The vast majority of really serious big business people, international business people from around the world that I talked to were somewhere between optimistic and very excited. They were really very, very positively regarded. And of course, there's some cynicism. We all know that they may not get it completely right, that they may not succeed to the level that they want to. But by gum, there was a lot of passion to achieve great things for Britain. And there was a lot of the investment community, huge businesses like BlackRock, that were really positive about supporting Britain, investing in Britain, and the future under the Labour government. So I came tremendously enthused.
And John, and just one thing I want to focus on about that is clearly this reset that Keir Starmer wants to have with Europe. Now, that in part is about his growth agenda. You were a kind of big Brexiteer, I think it's fair to say, or a vocal Brexiteer. Do you welcome the Prime Minister trying to form, frankly, a closer relationship with the European Union?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't we? I mean, I said all along during...
Brexit, I thought Brexit was the opposite of that, no?
No. Let me finish the answer your question. I said all along that I don't want to be part of the EU, but I'm European and I want a close relationship like we had under the common market with our neighbours and our trading partners. And of course, that's absolute common sense that we want a great relationship with the whole of Europe, but we don't want to be part of the EU. And if you want me to give an example why that would be, let's just look at the way that help was denied to Ukraine to let men, women and children suffer and be slaughtered as a consequence of Hungary being the only one country that stood against that decision to send help to Ukraine. That's disgusting. It's a disgusting constitution that needs reform and needs changing, because you cannot have one rogue country holding the whole EU to ransom.
And John, just while I've got you, you are now a Labour supporter. You came out, if you like, before the election. Are you prepared maybe to put your money where your mouth is? Are you going to stop funding or help bankrolling the Labour Party?
I've not funded the Labour Party, nor any plans to do so, nor have they made any request for me to fund them.
Would you consider it?
This is not about funding the Labour Party. It's about supporting them in their quest to make Britain great. And if they needed my support for the next election and they've done a good enough job, maybe I'll consider that. But it's not really about that. It's about me helping them with their decisions and the success of this country.
OK, that's I think a definitely strong maybe. John, thank you very much indeed. John Caldwell there joining us down the line. OK, you're watching Business Live. We're going to take a look at the market in just a couple of minutes. As you see, the FTSE down a little bit. We'll have all the details just after this quick commercial break.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. Sky News, get the full story first. Do you fear a fourth indictment?
He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sir Koulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Sky News gets the full story first. It's legal to let go.
Set the speed and take the hands off.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
This is the game changer seat. Look, it even comes with binoculars.
Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Well, as we do at this time every morning, let's have a look at the markets. We'll start with oil this morning. A barrel of Brent crude is currently down, as you can see, around 5% to just under $74 a barrel. That's after the Israeli government effectively confirmed that retaliatory strikes against Iran would not target its nuclear or oil facilities. And that has had a mixed effect on the FTSE, which is, as you can see, down around 0.5% there. Some of the big fallers, unsurprisingly, are the oil giants, BP and Shell, both down. BP, as you can see, down there nearly 5%. But where there are losers, there are also winners, and they are the airlines that obviously rely on oil quite a lot. EasyJet and the British Airways owner IAG are doing a bit better this morning, as you can see, up both of those airlines. And this is how Asia finished, a very mixed picture following the record high for the S&P 500, with Wall Street buoyant thanks in parts to AI chip stocks such as Nvidia. But over on the continent, again, bit of a mixed picture this morning. Companies beginning to report the third quarter earnings. The biggest gainer actually is on the stock 600. It's Sweden's Ericsson, which jumped 8.4% after beating the earnings forecast. And as we've seen with the currencies, the pound is currently trading a little up against both the dollar and the euro. Now, let's join Patrick Farrell. He is the Head of Research and Chief Investment Officer at Charles Stanley. Very good morning to you. Patrick, let's talk about oil first. We're in a very different position today than we were last week.
Well, month to date, oil is still up around 4%. So we still see some of the benefits coming through from the heightened geopolitical risk, particularly in the Middle East. I do think that the degree of escalation is going to continue. It's not something that they can just sort of put a lid on. And I think from Israel's perspective, they want to really sort of look at what is going to really have an impact on any sort of military strike on Iran. Now, that said, the ramifications of any sort of retaliation from either Iran directly or from some of the sort of terrorist groups around might actually look to target some of the Saudi operations as well. So it is a very delicate sort of situation. Certainly understand the US perspective in terms of going into an election. They don't want the gasoline price to rise any more than what it has. It's actually in a very sort of good spot at the moment. So they are going to really put the pressure on Israel to make sure that some of those energy facilities are basically looked after.
Indeed, and we'll have to see how that plays out in the days and weeks to come. Let's talk about domestic matters here in the UK. Wage growth is falling back effectively. Does that now mean that this interest rate cut next month is kind of nailed on, if you like?
Well, I think if you look at the direction of travel, one number is not enough to do it, but I do think the direction of travel in terms of where wages have come down to, and also some of the comments that we've made this morning in relation to some of the employment market more generally, it does allow the Bank of England to have a little bit more confidence, I would say a lot more confidence, to actually start to or continue to cut rates. I don't think they want to be aggressive, but also touching on what Governor Bailey said the other week, I do think that they want to actually move ahead with some of the sort of rate cut expectations that are currently in the market.
And just finally, Patrick, while we've got you, I'm a big fan of podcasts. I think lots of people in this country are, millions are, but also worldwide, and particularly in the US, it seems that Audio Boom is doing very well, particularly in the lead up to the US general election.
I think there have been, obviously politics is a great opinion sort of grabber, and anything in terms of discussions around politics, both in the UK, and we've sort of seen that, but also heading into the US election, has been a great sort of topic of conversation, particularly for some of those webcasts. So this is a sort of situation where obviously Audio Boom has been able to capitalise on a lot of the different elements that are happening right around the world, and actually getting the actual revenue coming through from the advertising. So I think that that's been a very, very good result for some of these smaller cap names in the UK, and it's actually going to be a benefit, I think, going forward as well.
And just, Patrick, very, very quickly on this, because we've got about 30 seconds left or so, is this sustainable in markets like the UK, do you reckon, where, the market is much smaller?
Well, it's obviously a challenge. So we need to think about how the UK government in particular can actually drive some of the investment, and I say long-term investment dollars, into the sort of UK listed market. I think that that's going to be an incredibly difficult challenge, but it's one that really needs to be addressed. So I'm absolutely, fingers crossed, that we've got a very good prospect coming forward for UK
Okay,
listed.
Patrick, appreciate your time as always. Patrick Farrell, thank you very much. That's it from me for now. I'm back at 4:30 this afternoon. The headlines are up next at midday.